Here is my video review for the sequel to The Falls, or Falls Testament of Love, or as I call it, The Falls 2. When I tried to watch this for the first time, I gotta figure this out, sooner or later. When you're already in a bad mood, and when you're about to watch a movie that you know what the content is going to be, and all that stuff, apparently I picked a bad time to watch it. On that note, recently having watched it for the first time without the personal bias, I have to say that I was impressed. But I also wouldn't be surprised if the writer, or if the creator of both movies decided to do a third chapter. I wouldn't question that at all. I like the dynamic between once again the two main characters, although for obvious reasons the two main characters have both gone in completely different directions. They're no longer the same. For those that have really seen the first one, you may like this one and you may not. It depends on how open-minded you are, and it also depends on where you stand on certain issues. I do consider myself fairly open-minded, but there are certain things that even I'm fairly unflinching on, as like everyone else. I don't pretend to be infallible. I don't even pretend to be perfect. But I can tell you that there is a right and there is a wrong. There's logical and there's illogical, and a lot of other stuff. The ending of the sequel, if nothing else, was very heartbreaking and very bittersweet. But in some ways, I guess I should have seen it coming. The two main characters, like I said, they pretty much go in their own direction after 2 or 3 years together. And for those that have seen the first one, you know what I'm talking about. Like I said, I guess I should have seen the ending the way it happened, but as heartbreaking and as bittersweet as it was, I understood why it ended the way it did. Because one character retained his faith, even though he's no longer affiliated with any particular religion, in any organized religion, and I understand that. The other one, on the other hand, was forced to, I don't want to say reject his true sexuality. Actually, maybe reject is a better word. I think he had to reject his true sexuality, but the truth of the matter is, once his friend came back into the picture, it was pretty hard for him to deny his true feelings for long. On that note, I do not believe in the conversion reparative. I mean, take your pick. There's all kinds of terminologies for this, and I don't agree with any of them. I believe your sexuality, for the most part, is something that you're engraved with. I don't expect everyone to agree with me on this, but there you go. On the other hand, I do think that if someone is ashamed enough of who they are, or in this case, what they are, sexuality in particular, if they want to try, and I'm going to put try in loose quotations, if they want to try to make a change for themselves, the only way I'm going to excuse that is if they do it on their own time and their own terms, and possibly even their own pace. I don't believe the church or society, or to a degree even their own parents, should be allowed to push that on someone. I just think it's right. I really, really don't. If anything, that was one thing both these movies covered directly and head-on. Like I said in my review for the first one, these movies both covered religious intolerance almost head-on. And it was kind of an in-your-face approach. And I liked that. Both movies are very well done, but I would not be surprised if there was a third. I really wouldn't. I liked how, for those who have seen it, you probably know what I'm talking about. RJ and Chris, they remain very compatible and their dynamic is very strong. But when Chris and RJ first encounter each other, Chris has this very, very cruel demeanor in the sequel towards RJ, and for the life of me, I'm not sure why. Although I can kind of understand where he's coming from, because he was forced to reject his true sexuality in order to attempt to be normal. But what can you say? What is normal these days? I mean, does it even really exist? To me, it's almost, I don't know. As open-minded as I am, I think normal is highly overrated. I think it's more fun to be weird or even eccentric, if you know what I mean. I also liked how not only were RJ and Chris on different paths, their parents were too, and I liked that. I liked how RJ's father, who we saw more of in the sequel than we did his mother, I liked how in the sequel RJ's father was just not interested in seeing anybody, and I mean anybody, make fun of his son. And for that, I commend the writers for writing him that way, because he wasn't quite that receptive in the first one, to say the least. It doesn't take long for Chris and RJ to rekindle their friendship, let alone their love for each other. But until I got about halfway through it, I wasn't sure where it was going to go. I was kind of leery as to where it was going to go from there. Because, like I said, not only did Chris have to reject his true sexuality, he literally had to pretend to be someone that he wasn't. And I don't understand. I don't understand that. Like I said in my first review for the first one, excuse me, I don't think that you should judge two consenting adults loving each other, sexually active or not, on the same grounds as everything else. I mean, there are still parents out there who would rather have a child being something like a serial killer, maybe even a pedophile, as opposed to this. And to me, that is insane. To me, that is absolutely insane. Not that there's any comparison between pedophiles and rapists, serial killers, or even the LGBT community, because there's no comparison. Not in my opinion. Like I said, if you haven't seen it yet, you very easily may be impressed, because I'm fairly open-minded myself, and I have seen a lot of gay-themed movies, but this one, because it covers religious intolerance head-on, I have to admire the way it was done. I really, really do. And for that alone, I commend it. Anyway, on that note, check it out, if you haven't already. But you're almost better off waiting a couple days, watching the first one, and waiting a few days, if not a couple weeks, before watching the sequel. Because at least that way you'll be able to take it in a little bit easier. Because it does get deep. And I am so not kidding about that. On that note, check them out. You don't take my advice, but check them out. You might be impressed. Thank you.